What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my fantabulicious even co-host, Grant Hughes. Before we get started, please remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you consume it. YouTube, hit that sub button, like, comment, help the algorithm love us back. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, wherever you get your pods. Download every episode. If you've done all those things, please consider telling people about us. Retweet our promos on Twitter. And follow us on all the socials, which are in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. And finally, join our Discord. Don't be like Grant. Join the Discord. Lots of fun conversations happening in there. As a refresher, we split this up and we just came up with what our biggest, most pressing or question is for each squad. We tried to be like in depth about this, but also the reason we're asking these questions is because we don't necessarily know the answers. There were people specifically in the YouTube comments who were like, well, why would you make a podcast out of things you don't know? We're curious people. And like, that's the nature of this exercise. Like, I don't have I'm not asking this question I'm about to ask about the Atlanta Hawks if I knew the answer to it. I would tell you the answer. So I thought it was an instructive exercise. Some people disagree. Here's hoping you enjoy it. We begin with the Miami Heat. And my question for them, Miami Heat be tanking for Victor Wembanyama? my actual question for them, is it like, is this title window of this core just closed? And I'm going to use that to sort of segue into the offensive concerns I have for them. They've been banged up some games beyond comprehension when you look at who's available. Butler's dealing with a knee injury. But the Heat are 22nd in offense. They've lost 6 of their last 9 games. They're 26th in offense during this stretch. They are bottom 7 in rim field goal percentage and frequency. They're 25th in three-point shooting. They cannot function without Jimmy Butler. 9th percentile in the half court without him. And then you look at just like all 4 of their stars playing together. Stars, I'll put in quotes, but you have Hero, Bam, Lowry, and Butler. They have not played a ton together, so I want to note that. But their offense is in the 31st percentile with all of those stars, all those players on the floor, which is just like, those are your 4 best players. You would want them to be like really freaking good together. And I don't know what the answer is here. Like, if you're getting to a point where it's, oh, like Gabe Vincent's injured, what the fuck are we going to do? That's probably that's a pretty big issue. And I don't know what the pathway to fixing this team is internally. Is it Victor Oladipo comes back and they're fine? I think at minimum, they need someone who's like at the 4, just to like, it can't be Caleb Martin, Nikola Jovic, and Bam Adebayo together. Like, that's the fact that we're like talking, like that's needed to happen a bunch already. So at minimum, they need to do something like that. But Jay Crowder coming in, I don't think that makes your offense going from bottom 5 right now. Again, they've been so banged up to like league average. And so is this just a team that's built to win ugly in the playoffs, or is there something more sinister at play here?
That's the question, because we've seen the Heat just they are built sometimes or often to just grind out games, and a lot of that's like a mentality and an experience thing. I think, other than, the injuries have been a factor, but there was some foreseeability here with, they just didn't fill a starting spot. Tucker left and they just didn't backfill that. And all of the hypotheticals of, well, can we really play Caleb Martin at the 4 that often? Are we going to trust a teenage rookie? Are we going to have Jimmy Butler just be the 4 all the time? And that means, are we going to play Hero in the first unit? And what's that going to do to the offense off the bench? Which has been like, there's just all these questions that were foreseeable that just weren't answered. So on some level, like, yeah, this is just what this team is. I do think, there's some optimism I think you should bake in, just because, like, they're set top 7 in minutes this year, which is starting at the bottom. It goes Vincent, Hero, Martin, Strus, Adebayo, Butler, Lowry. Like, that's pretty solid. There's not a power forward in there, which is a problem that we talked about. And you're pretty small in general.
The lineup with Caleb Martin, though, has held up fairly well defensively.
Martin's been good. He's shooting 38% from 3. He plays really hard. Like, I just think it's probably not great if he has started more games than anyone on the team other than Lowry. And even that's like, how about that? I'm surprised myself just reading that. It feels to me, yeah, you're right. I think if to level up, I don't think this offense is good enough to do anything in the playoffs. They need another guy. It's not Oladipo, by the way. He was like my swing piece for them preseason. Kind of an X factor idea of like, well, that's that I feel like the ship has maybe
The
sailed there.
number of teams I endorsed signing him before free agency, boy, are they
Yeah.
lucky they didn't listen to me.
Right. I thought he would I thought he potentially might matter a lot, but really even if he were healthy, how much does that really change, he doesn't bring the size, he's not a guy who guards wings or combo forwards. I don't know. Yeah, the Heater I'm always hesitant because I was just looking today at the standings like holy shit, they're what are they 7-11 or something, or they're down, outside the play-in. That seems wrong, but then you look at just the talent and the way it's put together. I don't think they're going to finish the season under 500, but I would really have to do some gymnastics to get them up even into the like Atlanta, Cleveland, Toronto tier in terms of where I think they'll be at the end of the year.
I don't like I've always defaulted to just the Heat are going to figure it out.
Sure.
But like this is just I don't know, and I don't know what we're expecting to get better because the half court offense was an issue last year, by the way. This isn't just coming out of the blue.
Right.
And so yeah, I don't like I wonder if they are a team that's always been aggressive, but are they a team that do you feel good enough about this team if you are Miami to then make an aggressive trade? And they're even limited in what they could do there because of Tyler Hero signing that extension. It's like
Yeah.
everything they do is going to be Duncan Robinson, Nikola Jovic, and a crap ton of picks. And so
Yep.
like I'm not saying the ceiling is Jay Crowder, but like even a move like that, you're not even dealing directly with the Phoenix Suns, is my guess, because they have no use for Duncan
For Robinson.
Robinson.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, are you trading when he's trade eligible, Caleb Martin? Like that, he would actually make sense for Phoenix. But like, does that like going from Jay Crowder to Caleb Martin? So it's tough for me to envision a deal that addresses the myriad concerns the Heat have right now. And if you're looking at it internally, I actually think Tyler he's clearly not focused on setting up teammates as much this year. I think he's been really good overall, looking at the types of shots he's hitting. I know people want him to play off the ball a little bit more. He's hitting like a pretty good percentage of his pull-up threes right now. And to be quite honest, like they need him to hit those shots because he's the only one on the team who can hit those. Like Jimmy Butler's not hitting off the dribble threes. And Kyle Lowry's been all over the place with those. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the hero narrative is one that we talked about in the playoffs. Like that's again, like how different is this really with the half court offense? I remember it being the thought being going into every Heat series was the defense will be good. I'm just not sure how they get a bucket outside of Butler, and it all fell to Hero. And it's like Hero was a huge determinant of their success in playoff series, and that's fine, but it's also part of the reason that they're just not getting anything done offensively this year.
Where do you land on Bam?
I love the theory of Bam. I've always loved the guy that could facilitate from the elbows, could guard 5 positions and rim protect. I think the rim protection aspect has kind of long been overblown. I also think it's very clear that he probably needs to be like no more than your like third offensive option on a really good team, and on a great offense, he's probably just passing and rolling and cutting, and he's not creating anything because I don't know, like that's a luxury. And I think if you had an offense that was otherwise just better equipped, then he could kind of explore the space a little more. But I think offensively, he's not someone that if you need 20 from Adebayo to like an efficient 20 to survive on offense, and it's not like a luxury that he does once in a while, then I think that's probably not the best place to be.
He just teases me so much. Like he's ratcheted up a little bit lately. He leads Miami in shot attempts over the past per game over his. I think he played in 6 of their last 7, but that's like, part of that's just because look at who's available on there. But he's averaging over 20 during that stretch. Thrown a lot of turnovers this year as well. He's a fantastic player.
I love him.
Defensive player of the year candidate. I think I might be with you where he might need to be your third best offensive player on like the type of team you're looking for.
He can be a really important piece of an offense, but the shot attempts, I think that just doesn't feel to me like where
Maybe
you
it's
want him
maybe
contributing.
it could be 2 if your first guy is like different from Jimmy Butler, where they
Yeah.
kind of occupy a little bit of the same space a lot of the
Yeah.
time. The fact that the idea was that Bam needed to be this team's best player at some point, I think almost works against him because
Mhm.
I don't think that's the answer. It's Jimmy Butler needs to be your best player if you're going to have a line to title contention.
Yeah. Or if Adebayo is your best player, it's because he runs away with defensive player of the year and is like pretty good on offense. Like that would be ideal. But again, we're talking about the Heat's offense and it's not good enough. I have the Bucks next. This is kind of a two-parter, related again to kind of a positional issue. Can Chris Middleton save the offense? And part two, does that mean Javon Carter can keep starting? So like Grayson Allen seems like one of those. Grayson Allen is kind of in the John Collins camp of just he's in every like, well, what if, the Bucks moved him for something? Maybe that's going to be Jay Crowder. But so the Bucks so far this season, great defensively, as you mentioned earlier. They figured out how to protect the rim and keep you from shooting threes, which is a pretty solid way to be one of the best defenses in the league. They're 22nd on offense. Again, this is a day old. 24th in effective field goal percentage, 18th in turnover percentage. Those are all the worst figures they've had since 2015-16, which is really kind of not quite Giannis time yet. Like he wasn't full fledged Giannis at that point.
Right.
So that's significant. So I mean, you can throw the caveats in of it's early. Middleton hasn't played yet. Pat Connaughton hasn't played. Holiday and Giannis have both missed time. But like this is a top 7 offense each of the last 4 years, and Middleton is a guy that they trust with a lot of late game possessions. He runs a lot of the pick and rolls with Giannis to the extent that the Bucks ever do that. He's the guy they trust with the ball the most. So does him coming back just suddenly mean that the Bucks are now, the best defense in the league and a top 5 offense again? I'm hesitant just because it's just there are bigger problems, or there are more problems, not bigger ones than Middleton being out. There's just several players that have either underperformed or haven't been on the floor often enough. But what interests me most is I like the idea of Javon Carter playing with the starters because you could you get some, it's kind of cool to have another point guard-ish player on the floor. And also, I think he can guard up. He's spent a fair amount of time guarding wings, and we know Holiday can guard friggin' power forwards if he has to. So you get something interesting going there. And maybe the Middleton return and Carter staying in as a starter or in a big role playing with the starters kind of gets the Bucks to that like, oh, this at least our best 5 just doesn't really give opponents any quarter on either end. Because Carter is a 38% three-point shooter, low volume, but he's not going to take that away. And if that's all Allen is doing for you, for example, is running around off screens and shooting threes, then, I mean, Carter's not going to be as mobile, but the defensive boost is ridiculous. So, one, I'll just throw it to you. If Middleton comes back, like, do you have any offensive concerns at all anymore? And would you have Carter be starting in place of Grayson Allen or whoever else? Throw Marjon Beauchamp in there, who had a couple solid ones. I know you're big on him, but would you keep Carter in the starting 5?
Look, they beat the Blazers in Pat Connaughton's return, so
I
I think
see.
they're
I'm a
fine.
day late on my info. I didn't realize
So everything you just said is invalid because Pat Connaughton is going to save this offense. No, I think.
that's it all.
Look, did you know that Milwaukee has the least efficient transition offense in the NBA right now?
No, and how is that possible?
And I think what Middleton does, and also Drew Holiday was hitting his threes, what that does is it opens the floor both in the half court and in transition to make things better. So I do think we can default towards this might be okay. I've been a big advocate of this. I know the Eurostep podcast, one of the best NBA podcasts out there. They cover the Bucks. Ty Windish we've discussed how they don't want to see Giannis. They don't want to see them downsizing. I still think the pathway to unlocking this offense would be, can you get that Jay Crowder trade done? And that's how you open the floor, because you can't. Grayson Allen might open the floor, but he's not. You're nudging Chris Middleton or Pat Connaughton as your 4. That just doesn't make as much theoretical sense on both sides of the ball. And Mark Stein said they were on the verge of getting Crowder from Phoenix. I want to know what that trade looked like. Was Phoenix getting Milwaukee's 2029 pick? Because Grayson Allen for Jay Crowder is not like, that's not the move if you're Phoenix. And who wants What is Grayson Allen getting you? I know Jay Crowder's value is plummeted, but I want to know what the terms of that deal was. The fact that it came out probably means it won't happen now, but I think we need to see it with Middleton back because he changed the dynamics in the half court a lot. Like he is probably their most important ball handler in the half court. I think that's fair to say over Drew Holiday. He just has a different cadence and level to his game. And where Drew Holiday is kind of just like, he's going to bail out at the rim, but then settle for a step back. But he can get to the rim, but he's going to finish there. We've seen him have some issues with that in the playoffs. I think Middleton, there's more of just like an underlying smoothness, being able to get just so comfortable in the mid range, being able to hit off the dribble threes, run the 2-man game with Giannis. That is just like, that's always worked really well for Milwaukee. I think we need to see it with Middleton back. And my guess would be the offense will be fine. Does Chris Middleton coming back really help their transition offense? I do not know. I think, Giannis needs to shoot better from the floor. He graded out. I actually just did this statistically relative to volume and efficiency. Giannis has been one of the 5 least valuable shooters in the league this season. That doesn't include free throws either. He's not hitting his mid-range or his threes at his usual clip. And so you need those to creep up a little bit more. You could say, yeah, well, he should just become less reliant on them. I'm a big believer that there is value in the volume, and you can, especially when Middleton's not available, like you can't just bank on him getting to the rim every 5 seconds. Yeah, he's still shooting over like 70% at the rim. That's great. He's not always going to be able to get there. And so I think, look, and the offensive efficiency, if he's shooting better than like 58% from the foul line, it probably looks a little bit different as well. So I can't bring myself to be too worried, but like, and they also like, let's not forget, they have Joe Ingles kind of coming back at some point. So this might just be a slow burn for Milwaukee. I'm not a super big believer. Like the fact that Wesley Matthews misses a few games and I'm like, this feels like it really matters. Like that's not like the best place to be in the year 2023 that we're coming up on. With the Javon Carter stuff, I'm not a Grayson Allen guy. I think so I would absolutely if you think that's Javon Carter's going to give you more aggressive defense and even just more aggressive offense than George Hill, a healthy George Hill, I would totally try that. And, but I do think ultimately they either need another ball handling upgrade, which I just don't think is feasible with the trade assets they have, or I do think they need the ability, even if you don't want to do it in the regular season. This is how we get to Giannis as the lone big. And look, maybe we have someone at the 4 in Jay Crowder who can cover some of the 5s and tussle with some of those guys on the glass so that Giannis doesn't have to. I do think they ultimately need to get there. I don't think Joe Ingles is going to be that player for them. And I think Bucks fans will push back against this because, yes, it's a recycled conversation. I asked Ty Windish about it every 5 seconds for a reason. I firmly believe it, though. I'm not trying to latch on to something that is over discussed. I really think that is, especially in the playoffs, and there's value in understanding how to play. Look, Brook Lopez is really fucking good, too. Right. And Bobby Portis has been an asset for Milwaukee. But when you're trying to look at optimizing the best versions of yourself, especially when you don't have that other creator in Chris Middleton, that's when I think you could argue when Chris Middleton comes back, it's probably less important to get to Giannis at the as your lone big, whatever you want to call it, than you would right now. But I still think you need that option, and they just don't have it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's interesting. If the goal is to get our regular season offensive rating up, then downsizing, I think, makes a lot of sense. But if the goal is to you're going to have to work a little harder on me I think Brook Lopez, especially this year, this is the wrong time to be saying we should take Brook Lopez off the floor because he's getting all this defensive player of the year hype, and has been really good and has looked like you would never guess this is a guy that had back surgery, especially at this age in his career. I don't know. I still think the best version of the Bucks just has Giannis at the 4, just overall. But yeah, I think if you're trying to figure out how to create some space, get more bodies moving, you do the Crowder in at the 4 and Giannis at the 5 is just hit you over the head, obvious. Or if not Crowder, someone like that maybe isn't on the wrong side of the aging curve. I can't talk about the Bucks anymore because I really want to tee you up for the Knicks.
All right. I hope everyone has an hour and a half. I have talked too much about Tom Thibodeau and the front office. It's time to talk about RJ Barrett.
Okay.
And the question is, I'm not answering it. I want to make that clear. Was the RJ Barrett extension a mistake? And did they overvalue him in general, where they could have had Donovan Mitchell for RJ Barrett and hella picks per Donovan Mitchell, which was like the best way to phrase it anyway. He has been so uneven this season. Listen to these splits. First 5 games of the year, 34.6% from 2, 14.3% from 3. His next 7 games after that, 45.5% from 2, 42.9% from 3. The following 5 games after that, 45.5% on 2s, holding steady, 2 of 25 on 3s, 8%. Then he goes on Monday night, is 10 of 16 from the floor. So a direct game after that. There needs to be more semblance of offensive consistency from RJ Barrett. He was finishing better at the rim at one point. That has now dropped back below 60%. He was hovering around 60% per cleaning the glass there. That has now dropped back below 60%. The thing I will say in his defense, and I also think he's gotten better, but he's had some really just like, defensive moments this year where he feels eminently screenable. And it's like, well, that's not the RJ Barrett that I've grown to appreciate over the past couple seasons. They still, and they've done it a little bit more, probably because they have to with some of the lineup decisions they've been dealing with. He needs to be staggered more from Julius Randle. That number, and I've cited this a bunch of times now, not on the podcast, but in stuff I've written, 82.5% of RJ Barrett's possessions are coming next to Julius Randle. Now, the Knicks are in the 66th percentile offensively during those minutes, but Jalen Brunson's on the court then. The Knicks are winning the minutes RJ plays without Randle, even though the offense is in the 25th percentile. Now, if you do RJ and Brunson without Randle, the complexion of that's going to change a lot. I also don't think we've seen RJ Barrett with enough of just the youngsters. Like, let's play him with Quickly and Reddish. I know Grimes has not been too healthy there. My point is, I don't think it's entirely his fault. The lineup context does not favor him. It puts him in a bunch of different roles. The Knicks don't always have pristine spacing. That being said, I guess I don't know what the consensus expectations were for RJ Barrett, but he was entering this season. You knew Jalen Brunson was the Knicks' best player. RJ Barrett, in theory, is still your single most important player because that's supposed to be your blue chip prospect, the guy who gives you a line to an internal star. I think we're finding increasing evidence just based on his efficiency that he's not going to be that guy, which in the macro is fine, but it's a problem when you treated him as such in the Donovan Mitchell trade talks. What I also will say, RJ Barrett has historically just been terribly inefficient in November and December. So there's a point that by the new year, he finishes the season on a tear. That's also not good enough. And so I don't think they've optimized the roster around him. That is on the Knicks. And so if I was to answer my own question, which I said I wouldn't do, I'm not going to say RJ Barrett is a bust or be completely out of RJ Barrett. But are we at a point where there needs to be some more wholesale discussions about RJ Barrett? If we're not there yet, we're getting pretty damn close.
Yeah, Barrett has been I feel like I've changed my opinion on him once a year in all 4 years of his career. And it has generally coincided with whatever really hot, like 6 or 8 or 10 game streak of 3-point shooting he goes on. And I think there was a much longer one either last year or the year before where like for half the season, he was on decent volume, a really good 3-point shooter. I can't look that up with the level
of second year. He was a good 3-point shooter. Right. There's a lot of off ball stuff, but you don't need him to you don't have to hit the off the dribble 3.
Yeah. I don't think the contract is a disaster. I think maybe this is assuming Donovan Mitchell just doesn't sign with the Knicks when he's a free agent, which just seems like based on his comments is very much on the table. I think it was probably a mistake if Barrett being in the deal was if the Knicks' unwillingness to trade Barrett was what kept Donovan Mitchell from being on the roster this year, because I don't think Barrett is a blue chip prospect. I think just there's lots of, there are these all external factors that you mentioned, like whether it's coaching, whether it's who he's got to play alongside, the lack of spacing that Randle and Mitchell Robinson create. But just like he's a high usage wing who the best he's ever ranked in points per shot attempts is in the 39th percentile. That was in his second year. He's generally like a bottom quartile guy in just scoring efficiency. And it's all like he gets to the rim a lot. He finishes okay. The volume matters, but everything else is just, you can't count on the ball to go in enough. And so where does that leave you? If he's not a pure shutdown guy, it's early, but we are 4 years in. It's fair to say like there's development ahead potentially, but you needed to have seen some signs of consistency in some area, right? Like, so, other than the hot streaks, other than, he's really put the clamps on for a couple weeks. Like, he's an okay passer, and that works well on the drives. Like, his assist percentage is high for his
When he doesn't have
position.
tunnel vision on those drives, yeah.
He does. Like, but I mean, part of it is he's just barreling into guys, and he's like it's like a last resort pass type of thing when the tunnel closes more, and he's got to do something. Yeah, I hate to just like decide, well, this guy is not going to have a certain ceiling, but like, I feel like we would have seen more by now to suggest that he could be that blue chip piece. Like, again, the contract's not like a crippler. I don't feel like we have to say the cap's going up and, all this other stuff. He's still young. He plays a high value position. Like, that's, there are ways forward. But I'd sure rather have Donovan Mitchell. I think that I don't feel like that's debatable at this point.
I still stand by, like, we don't actually know what the final tally was on the picks. There's a point where it was probably too many picks for me to do it, but RJ Barrett being the deciding factor. And look, I had toyed with it where I didn't know if you were trading RJ Barrett and a bunch of picks to get Donovan Mitchell, I didn't know if you should do it. I would have been very much more open to including RJ Barrett based off of what I've seen from him this season. But I will note, and we didn't focus on this just because we focused on so much. RJ Barrett's not the biggest problem in New York.
Of course not.
I think the pathway before you look at was RJ Barrett a mistake is, hey, can we get rid of the actual mistake on the roster, which is Julius Randle? And so that opens, and by the way, that opens up the pipeline for Obi Toppin as well.
Yeah.
So you're kind of killing two birds there.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't any great revelation either, but just if the guy's clear offensive strength is getting to the basket, get everyone the fuck out of the way. Like, stop having multiple players out there who either don't need to be guarded off the ball or are literally standing in the way of Barrett trying to get to the basket.
And they've played some just like smaller burst lineups where it's almost 5 out. If you, depending on how you feel about Barrett, with like Brunson and Hartenstein and Toppin, and then they have another perimeter player and there was not Julius Randle. Like, let's just see more of that. Like that. And that's the problem is that you have Julius Randle. Right. And it's just like, there's this implicit obligation to play him or feature him. And I do think that's really hurt RJ. So, and I would love to see just more RJ and Brunson just independent of Randle for like a long stretch.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about the Knicks forever. I'm going to move on. I got the Orlando Magic, and we've hit on this before, but to me, it's the most pressing issue. Is there a guard on the roster who will start when Orlando, when Orlando develops into a playoff team?
Well, okay.
Which could be a ways down the road.
Are we that low on Jalen Suggs?
Yeah, we are.
He's shooting over 40% on pull-up threes. He's still shouldering a point guard's burden because they don't have a healthy point guard. Is it an indictment to say that Jalen Suggs shouldn't be your primary ball handler or playmaker? Is that really an indictment?
Well, that's not the question, though. Is he going to be a starting caliber guard on a good team in the next 3 years? You're in. You're in.
There's like defensive moxie to him too, and the fact that he's hit, the fact that he's so low on catch and shoot threes, I get it. Like, there's skepticism. Like, when you're hitting more of your pull up threes than your catch and shoot threes, like, I don't understand. Like, what does that say about your scalability? But like, Paolo Banchero was banged up for roughly forever. They don't have, like you said, there's no Cole Anthony. There's like RJ Hampton in spurts. There's no Markelle Fultz, who I also don't think is like the ideal partner for him anyway necessarily. But like, I think the question is, they need a game match. Like, this would be a team that people have mentioned them like, oh, if Donovan Mitchell during that trade or SGA became available, they should just go out and trade for Mike Conley. I mean, like, I guess he would cost a first round pick at this point, but like, you had Monte Morris to this roster. I think you see Jalen Suggs' value, and he hasn't had the opportunity to be that guy for a long stretch at all. He dealt with some injury issues last year, as did Markelle Fultz. Now this year you come in and you have the Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz stuff. I guess it changes like when Paolo Banchero, he plays deeper in his career, even Franz Wagner a little bit, having Wendell Carter Jr. facilitate some of the offense. There are different things you could do but if you have Suggs as your lead guard, I think it's fair to like, is that what he's going to do? And the answer is, I guess, no at this point. And did I ever view him as like the primary playmaker type? I probably had more hope for it than we've seen. I also wonder, like, what would it look like if he was playing within some brighter spacing too than what we've seen in Orlando his first 2 years? we are not even a year and a half into his career.
Well, okay. Granted, yeah, he's young. He missed time with injury last year. So first of all, let's do the easy stuff first. Cole Anthony feels like his ceiling is he's going to be like a pretty good six
Better
man.
than Jordan Poole. Yeah.
Well, who's not better than Jordan Poole right now? RJ Barrett's better than Jordan Poole right
Jordan
now.
Poole's actually been like better lately, but
He had a good game. Yeah, he made half his shots last night.
That should have been my question for the Magic. Is Jordan Poole one of the most overrated players in the NBA?
I just feel like RJ Hampton, 4th-year option, not picked up. Doesn't seem like he's going to be a long timer there, even though he's been actually pretty good.
Better than he was last season. Yeah.
So Cole Anthony I don't view as a starter. Markelle Fultz is just like doesn't make sense on this team.
I appreciate the Magic fans' passion for Markelle Fultz.
It's easy to root for the guy. And he does have like several, I mean, is the number 1 overall pick. Like he does have several like legitimate starting caliber NBA skills. It's just the shooting is
on this roster. You need to not have that level. And I know people have tried to talk themselves into him being a 2-level scorer. He's more like a 1.5 level scorer because he's not like actively trying to get to those like mid-rangers and like putting the moves, like dance moves on players and jacking them up. Like they're giving him those shots. He's taking them. He had hit more of them than we expected. Good, but that's not like a weapon.
No, it's not. It's like you're getting by sort of kind of just barely. It's not. But so, yeah, this is really just a question about Suggs. We've disagreed about him before. You have the luxury, I think, smartly of saying it's early, which it is stupid early in his career. And I made this point last time we got on the topic. If it is clear that Banchero and Wagner are going to be the guys that have the ball most often, which I think, however you feel about Suggs, it does feel like that makes sense, at least with the way the roster is constructed. And I think Wendell Carter is the other guy you just pencil in as like, you have 3 locks in your front court. These guys are it for the next however long on the Magic. And I think that's pretty good. Maybe great if Banchero is what he looks like he's going to be. I think you got to have guys that are just going to make shots around those 3. And so, however, there's no doubt that Suggs is like an all NBA, all defensive caliber defensive player today, right now, and should improve. So game changer on that end, I think probably. But I just need him to be a league average catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He's nowhere close to that. His finishing around the rim is not great. He's not making free throws still this year. It's improved a little bit. There's all, you go down the Orlando Magic Twitter rabbit hole, and is like his post entry passes are terrible. Like he just can't do that function as a point guard. So that's a problem for me. So if it's clear that he's not going to be the on ball guy, which it's early, I get it. It seems like that's just not likely to be his role for this team. Then I don't feel like he can make enough shots to justify having him be the guy as opposed to someone else who's worse defensively, but is just going to make you pay for all the attention you're going to have to devote to the front court guys. So I'm not sold. I want to be sold. I love his run in college. I love a guy that just guards and like defines himself that way. I just need more offensively. That's all. So I'm answering my own question. He will not be starting for the playoff version of the Orlando Magic.
In support of what you were saying, there are 282 players who have finished at least 15 spot-up possessions this year. Jalen Suggs is dead last in points scored per possession on those touches at 0.46.
That's bad. That's tough.
I think he's 7 of 33 is his shooting overall. That's low. Yeah. I mean, Isaac Okoro, by the way, is at 0.51. That's an issue unto itself. Jalen Smith, by the way, it turns out his first 7 games of the Pacers last year weren't a harbinger of how he was going to shoot for the rest of his career. Who knew?
Yeah,
he's at like 0.56. So I get your concern. It could be sort of an issue. I'm trying to think of what would be a good like parallel to this, whereas we've just seen a player, when you're looking at the 2 best players, there's not redundancy, but the way he's best used, he doesn't do enough of the other things to be used in that way. Whereas yes, Suggs should maybe be on the ball. He's hitting over 50% of his twos. And if the pull up 3 holds, I get the skepticism there, especially given the struggles at the foul line. But if he's not good enough as a passer, or he's not good enough as a catcher, like what would be a good parallel for this like player right now, the situation that we've kind of seen?
Where he's like he's got a bunch of pluses, but they don't really matter as much in the context of this particular team construction.
The thing I was almost thinking about is just like Andrew Wiggins, who eventually was able to scale to a larger ecosystem later in his career, where he was needed to have the ball in his hands, but was he good enough with the ball in his hands to justify that? I'm just not ready to go there with Suggs at the moment. And they're completely different players. They I totally get it. But like that was Andrew Wiggins for someone was like, oh, he looks more comfortable like pulling up off the dribble from three than hitting these wide open jumpers off the catch. I can see that element from Suggs a little bit. I just want to see more.
Yeah, sure. I do too. I would love to be wrong. And there's a great chance I'll be proved wrong because we're like 50 some odd 60 games into his NBA career. And he's played mostly for like a bad team that has had injuries. So yeah, that's fair.
I have the Philadelphia 76ers. My question for them is simply this. What the fuck? The injuries are starting to mount as this is going to drop. So, like, you're going to have Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and James Harden out. Tyrese Maxey is going to be out probably for the next month, between 3 and 4 weeks, with a minor break in his left foot. Joel Embiid, left mid-foot sprain, going to miss at least a couple games. Then you have Harden, who's still a couple weeks away from returning from that strained foot tendon. Tobias Harris, by the way, he's dealing with some left hip stuff. So just like this team is barren of who is your primary dribblers are Shake Milton and DeAnthony Melton now. Without all three of Maxey, Embiid, and James Harden on the floor, the Sixers have a 97.9 offensive rating. That would be in the first percentile. What's also interesting, if we were looking to project ahead, is that the Sixers, they haven't played together a ton, but with their 3 stars in the court, their offense is only in the 42nd percentile. Right. Oh, look, Basketball Reference decided to go off with ads again. Don't you just love it? So what are they supposed to do on offense? And it's even just like, I guess we haven't seen them enough at full strength, but we were worried about their transition defense at one point. Now they've like completely flipped in terms of their defense has been a lot better. But how are you supposed to survive without all 3 of these guys? And what is the pathway to just getting better on offense? I don't know that it's a matter of like, you can fault Doc for a lot of stuff, but the injuries specifically are outside of his control. You do sort of wonder, there's not really room for Philly to take more threes. They're 22nd in rim frequency. It's probably pretty troubling that they're 29th in finishing around the basket. And like they're a top 10 3-point shooting team. And by the way, they're the best mid-range shooting team as well. If I had to guess, and this has been my theory, which I feel like a lot of people just disagreed with, I just feel like there's not enough of a change in cadence in how Philly plays, where it's like they are in the bottom 3 of transition frequency. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try and get into the half court, give the ball to Harden or Embiid, and hope that Maxey can supplement from there. They are not going to crash the offensive glass at all to get themselves like those additional opportunities. And I would love to see, especially because you have Maxey on this team when he's healthy. So I'm trying to talk about them at full strength. Like you shouldn't be 28th in average possession time. Like there are minutes where at least Maxey's on the court with only one of James Harden or Embiid. Get out and run. And so I think that's been the biggest, to me, is like the biggest weakness of their offense has actually been, okay, like there's just not enough variance here. But there's also just a big question of like, are they on the verge of, I guess we have to see when Joel Embiid comes back, but like they're kind of tottering on the edge of panic just with these injuries mounting up at the top, right?
Yeah, you gotta, it's just a question of how much this is going to cost them standings wise, because they're just not going to win. It's not just like some great revelation. Like what? So, I mean, Tobias Harris assuming the hip doesn't become an issue, like he's just going to have to cook. And then, yeah, I don't know where the supplemental scoring comes from. You're probably gonna have to play Tybal some more, and that, maybe B-ball Paul, maybe Paul Reed. This is finally the grand unveiling of Paul Reed, who's just been such a darling of NBA Twitter and like a bunch of analysts and draft guru guys. Maybe that's
the unveiling of PJ Tucker actually at the 5 too, but
yeah, well, maybe. Although, like, how good is that really when he's like your third option? Yeah, the Maxey thing, it's interesting. I forget what I was writing about him, but the idea was what you're describing of how is it that this, he does improve their transition frequency when he's on the floor, but it does seem like such an obvious let's have some minutes with no Harden or Embiid and surround Maxey with like your 4 best athletes of, dubious positional designation.
Oh, let's go through the best athletes on
Well,
Philly.
that's the thing. It gets rough, but just run, just see, one of the great things that you can have in a bench or in, a particular reserve is how they change the, like you said, mix up the cadence. You change the tone of the game. You change the pace of it. It's like a change up. That's one of the great things you get from good bench units is like, oh shit, the defense is like, well, these guys are playing differently now. Like, what do we do with this? That's a value add, I think, a lot of times. And Maxey being arguably the fastest guy in the league. I don't know who else he's in the conversation and they just don't
Fox is
run.
probably still there.
Yeah.
We're forgetting somebody obvious too.
Well, Morant's super fast. I
Right.
mean, but he's up there for sure. It should be a transition thing. But he's also hurt, so I don't know why we're talking about him. Yeah, I don't know what there's no answer. There's no answer when your top 3 players are out like this and you just have a bunch of catch and shoot guys more or less like as your support pieces. It's going to get ugly. There's no doubt.
Right now, your Washington. Philly calls and offers Maxey their 2029 first and Tobias Harris for Bradley Beal. Assuming Bradley Beal gives the okay, would you do it?
Hell yeah, I would. If I'm Washington,
Would you do it if you're Philly?
Would I do it if I'm Philly? That's really tough because Harris's contract. I think Beal's contract is so bad, but I think you got to win this year, and I think probably Beal, Harden, Embiid gives you a better chance than Beal, Harden, Maxey. Harden, Embiid, Maxey. I don't know. So, do you do that? I do it if I'm the Wizards. I don't know if I do it if I'm the Sixers. Probably.
I don't think I do. Just because we're talking about they need like a change of like pace, and like Bradley Beal's not going to give you that. I definitely, as a half court creator and maybe even a facilitator, I get that. So I guess push comes to shove, you would almost have to, just because it's Bradley Beal, but Maxey's so young, and that then that's just your team, and we're worried about them staying healthy now. Why is Bradley Beal considered more durable than Tyrese Maxey at this point? Like, he had a few seasons of just like good health before whatever happened last year. And look, to his credit, he's quietly just like, we're going to get to I won't talk about it, but he's like basically flirting with 50, 40, 90 slashes at this point. So I'd just be curious as to like, by the way, that's their hand if they actually want to make a move. Like, I guess you could throw Jaden Springer in there, but it's Tobias Harris, it's Maxey, it's a conditional 2029 first, I think, because of the obligation way it's structured to Brooklyn in 27. So that's the offer. And I'm just trying to think of like what higher end player that would get you. And also, Maxey's so good. This is what almost makes it difficult. It's a good problem to have, but like, you can't just trade Maxey now. I know I think he's one of the most valuable trade assets in the league because the Sixers are a team I think that'd be willing to consider anything. He has 2 years left on his, another year left on his rookie scale after this one. And he's just so good. And he's already shown he could fit next to 2 ball dominant stars while also carrying the offensive load himself. So I think he's one of the most valuable trade assets in the NBA. The issue with that is that substantially shrinks the number of players that you're willing to trade him for.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And is Beal on that level? I think the Sixers probably have to pull back a little bit with expectations just because they don't have the first round equity to include. But it was just a thought. And I was wondering, like, does the injury make it more likely they move him just because they're like need the urgency to have bodies? And I don't think anything would happen before the trade. Then I was just curious where you would land on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. My knee jerk is again just like I got to get off this contract. If from the Wizards' perspective, like I can't have this. Someone's offering me an out, even with bad money attached in Harris. Like, I'm taking it. But yeah, I mean, the last thing is, we know that the way Daryl Morey operates is like, get me the best players, and we just will figure out what to do around that. And I would imagine there's a model somewhere that says Bradley Beal ups the Sixers championship equity by like 0.7% over Maxey and Harris. And so he'd be like, well, we just do it. But that's not the case for most executives, I don't think. We'll move on to the Toronto Raptors. This is my last team. I love when a team like tries weird stuff or just something different and is hoping to be on the vanguard of a style that, might be the next, thing that shapes how teams operate or put rosters together. And the Raptors very much do that. We've talked about it for a couple of years now. They love their long wings. They don't really, always play a center, although Christian Coloco injuries have changed the way they've operated quite a bit. But they kind of just have a bunch of wings ideally. And I wonder though, and they leaned into that, like they didn't really fundamentally change last year's roster, which had some real issues. Namely, they're great at forcing turnovers, right? They're awesome in transition. Their half court offense is terrible. And they struggle to rebound sometimes. Now they've addressed that a little bit this year, but the statistical profile of this Toronto team is very similar to last year's. And that includes strengths and weaknesses, just which you'd sort of expect to get from a team that plays a lot of forwards and like Fred VanVleet, basically. So I wonder if they're leaning too much into last year's identity. And if maybe that's so, is that like commendable because we're really committed to playing this way? Or is it stubborn in the face of like, yeah, this gets you some advantages generally speaking, but there are costs to playing with a lineup that is different than almost any other team you go up against?
I think that's a fair question. I also just wonder, like, is it too early to ask it because of just how injured they've been?
That's the thing.
They're not even shorthanded. They've been decimated again.
What do you think just theoretically though? Like, are you still in? Because the Clippers are sort of doing some of that, but it's different because they have two.
Boy, were we off on the member? We were panicking about the Clippers and they were just like, oh no, we're just going to everybody.
I still need to see Kawhi be great for like more than 4 minutes at a time. But you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like it's not even specific to the Raptors. Like, if you're trying a weird thing as a team and you do it for basically a full year and change, and you've established like, yeah, we generate tons of turnovers and we're awesome on the break because we just have a bunch of 6'9" guys that are really fast, but we don't have any creation in the half court. And this has been a huge problem. We're trying to win playoff games. You got to be able to do something in the half court, and they're just not good at it. Like, is that stubbornness? Is that arrogance? Is that like commitment to, is that being patient? I don't know how to frame it. And that's like a fundamental thing to the Raptors because this is what they're trying to do. I just don't know if it's quite the right thing,
I think if it's going to be the right thing, it's Scotty Barnes basically becoming what Pascal Siakam was able to become on offense as a playmaker, I'll say. Mm-hmm. And while he's only in year 2. So I want patience with Jalen Suggs. There needs to be patience here. He seems to be like reacting to things faster, and his game feels a step or two faster, but like he doesn't look like that guy yet. We didn't say that about Pascal Siakam in year 2 though, but because what they need right now, what they're missing is that second guy or the third, depending on how you feel about Fred VanVleet. And I think it's harder to find that player in the form that they have catered to or been obsessed with. And so that's why Scotty Barnes is so tantalizing and so important to them. I get the unease, and I'm uneasy about it myself. And I don't want to say, I know a lot of Raptors fans believe in it. And every time we post a YouTube video on the Raptors where if we have concerns about their half court offense, they say that just like we're wrong. And it's just like, we're not, like, at some point we're not wrong. Like, I get that these fans are going to know the team more intimately, but like the half court offensive concerns are legitimate. And yeah, you can cobble together an efficient half court offense on your putbacks during the regular season. That's just not going to be a style that works in the playoffs. And like, hey, right now it's not even working in the regular season. No. They are 29th in the half court.
26 last year. So it's and just flip it. We're both on cleaning the glass, obviously. Flip it to transition, first in frequency, first in points added. Last year, second in frequency, fourth in points added. Like, this works just in certain contexts. And I guess I would just say, I'm no less interested in what the Raptors are doing. I think it's exciting when a team is just kind of being weird or being an outlier. But we're getting mounting information now that like, the trade-off is you win 46 games. They're on pace, I think, for 46 this year, just as they were last year. It's another similarity. And the playoffs are just the rules are different. The things that work are different. The things that get you killed are different. And I don't know, they got 3/4 of a season to keep working on this, and certainly getting everybody healthy again will change things. But I just wonder, it's I like the approach. I just don't know if it's going to work ultimately.
Yeah, it's high risk, and I also don't know like what do you pivot towards as an alternative? It's because you're not, the Kevin Durant stuff. If he became available again, that was always sort of out there, but you're not like you're too good to invest. I mean, they draft really well,
Right.
but I guess it's like a medium sized trade where you're partnering picks with some of your salary, who's not Scotty Barnes or OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam. If you were just looking to, is it unfair to want them to at some point to maybe diversify? Because like they're even like as good as Pascal Siakam has been, they're still in the 15th percentile of half court efficiency when he's been on the court this year. So like, is it unfair to ask them like, well, can you diversify your tack just a little bit?
Yeah.
But how do you go about that? Who's available that's going to help you there? I don't think it needs to be a star, is my point. And so you start to look at some of the actual salary they have on this roster. If you're willing to trade a first round pick, or even just like Eric Gordon would go a long way for this team in the half court. Whereas that's just like money matching and second rounders at this point. I honestly don't know. But yeah, that's I guess I just have not defaulted to not caring about it or believing in it, but the conviction is so strong
That's
in
when you
Toronto
get
that it's almost not worth questioning.
right. That's what you just have to, whatever you think about it, you almost have to respect it, because it's like you guys believe in this and you're just going to see it through to wherever this ends up. I feel like they're committed, which is, it's teams are too wishy-washy sometimes. I think it's cool that they're committed. I just don't know. I just don't know if it's going to work.
I have the Washington Wizards to clean us off or finish us off. I don't know where clean us off came from. Cleaning the glass is what it must have been on the brain. My question to you, the Wizards, they've won 6 of their last 7, during which time they have the second best defense in the NBA. Now we can get into the teams that they've beat over those 7 games. Shorthanded Miami, the G League Hornets, Oklahoma City. That was actually a hell of a game. But like they beat the Jazz. They beat the Mavericks without Beal. They beat the Hornets again. They are 8th in defense on the season, though. And so my question, and I'm going to present to you evidence before I allow you to answer it, is Washington's defense for real? And we asked this question, I'm sure, last year because they were off to just this like rollicking start. They have the 6th best half court defense in the NBA. You dig into the personnel, the starting lineup that they're playing at the moment, which is kind of by force, has been absolutely annihilating opponents. They're not getting lucky when it comes to, they limit not as drastically as Boston and Milwaukee, but they limit looks at the rim and from 3-point range. And they haven't gotten lucky with opponent 3-point shooting. They're 24th in opponent 3-point shooting. They're 10th in opponent shooting at the rim, which is just like, you have KP, you have Daniel Gafford, you have a bunch of like rangy, bigger wing type guys. They're doing this without DeLon Wright, who's been out. And then the other thing that they've done, it's low. They don't foul. They don't force turnovers, but they don't foul. And then it's, they're going to grab rebounds. They are, when you look at the opportunities that opponents generate per miss, so those second chance opportunities, only the Chicago Bulls allow fewer of those opportunities now. It's like the Wizards are not letting you, I'm not even just like, it's not just specific. It is, yes, a defensive rebound, but like the Wizards are not giving you like putbacks. They're taking away that easy stuff. And so it feels like there's an air of legitimacy to this in a way that there wasn't last year. And I can't tell if I'm being, to use your word from before, like a little too wishy-washy here. But like Denny Avdia's had to play more minutes over this span. He's actually looked really good. I know that I'm a sucker for Denny Avdia in the first place. But like even Rui Hachimura looked better before. I think he's dealing with something right now too. They seem like they gotten good minutes from Jordan Goodwin this year. So I'm just like, are they a top 10 defensive team is my question. And then look, if you say yes, how do you let that inform? Because I think some people might be expecting us to treat them like the Hornets. What should this team tank? And I think that's probably a fair question. But do you think Washington's defense is for real? And then if it is, does it matter?
Yeah. So the second part's harder. So I'll take the first part. I think you probably, I know we were talking about, there were 2 or 3 other teams that were surprises to be in the top 10 of defensive efficiency a week or 2 ago. And I think I punted on all of them. The Wizards were one of them. I think there are a couple things that suggest there is some sustainability here. And the first is their location-based effective field goal percentage. Like you went through the, not a lot of opportunities for opponents at the rim. Not a lot of, from three. They're pretty good at limiting the corners. So I don't think it's a smoke and mirrors thing. It's not like opponents are just missing a bunch of open threes, like, which can still be a massive driver of defensive effectiveness, even 20-ish games into the season like we are now. I
Right.
think that's kind of real. The other thing, just when I've watched, is, you know, Bradley Beal is trying. Like, I think, he's making much more of an effort defensively than he had in the last couple of years. Maybe that's health. Maybe that's sensing like this team actually might be pretty good. It's worth my effort. I think Porzingis has mattered. He's an imperfect defensive player, but he does have his value as a rim protector, as just someone who
His
deters shots.
mobility, like
Yeah,
hip mobility, I guess I would call it, has looked so good just in Washington in general since he's come over
right.
from there.
It's different. It's different. And hopefully that lasts, because it's always just been a question of can he stay healthy enough to really move like he's capable of. So there's a few things that point to sustainability. Does it matter? I mean, so zoom all the way out, and what you still have is a roster built around Beal and an enormous contract and some wings that are at least interesting in different ways. Kuzma, Avdia, Hachimura, like, sure, there's rotation caliber players there. Porzingis is your second best player, probably. Kuzma might have something to say about that. I don't know. But he's, health issues. He's kind of not functioned as like your second option on a good team successfully. We tried that in Dallas with a better player than Beal next to him. So, like, does it matter insofar as are we buying or selling? I don't think the Wizards were going to be sellers anyway. So I think it's probably just like a pleasant surprise and a good story if this defense is legit, and it, maybe it keeps Washington respectable or with a winning record deeper into the season than you or I might have thought. I don't feel like it makes them someone that are likely to win a first round series or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know how much it matters, but I do think there is some compelling stuff that suggests like they actually are for sure going to be above average defensively. I think, and top 10 is very much in play.
I wonder if it changes things I don't think the roster is currently constructed, I'm with you, is built to win a playoff series if this sustains. But I'm just wondering if this gives them more of a license to be aggressive as buyers, because like they do have some money they could play around with when you're looking at the contracts. And yes, I know they owe that 2023 first to the Knicks, but like if you're a team that's sending the Wizards a good player, you're probably banking on them making the playoffs this season. And they would if they started today. They're in the top 5. Yeah. So you can bank on that conveying. And there's worse scenarios than when the first round pick is coming in 2025. You want to short the Wizards' long-term future. So they can, in my mind, I know it's conditional. If they trade you 3 first-round picks, that would be a mega trade. But if they trade you 3 first-round picks, you can bank on those 3 first-round picks conveying unless you're allowing them to be protected. And so I just think they're a sneaky team on the blockbuster market. We've seen the rumors about like Phoenix being interested in Kuzma. Will the Wizards trade him because he's coming up on his contract? I'm just wondering, like, if we're getting into December, closer to Christmas, and their defense is still hovering around the top 10, and it just looks like they need a little bit more offensive juice, that another, I would call it the outside in scorer to pair with Beal, who's not Monte Morris, it's not Kuzma, it's not Denny Avdia. Like, that might be a team that could go after it, and I actually wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, it would make more sense. I mean, I think compared to the alternative of, well, let's see what we can get for Kuzma. Let's flip, let's get some assets. Let's get some picks, which was really not on the table once the Beal deal got done. Yeah, they could definitely be buyers. I think if you said, are they buyers or sellers? Like the second you give Beal $250 million, like you're buyers. You're not selling anything else. So yeah, they do profile as an interesting team. I think as I'm looking at some other stuff on them, they are 5th in the East, but their SRS, their simple rating system, Basketball Reference puts that together. It's strength of schedule, factors in with net rating. They're still in the negative, and they really stand out among the top like 6 or 7 teams that are all well into the positive. So the schedule has been a factor here, I think, but you alluded to that off the top. So, that's not anything new. I will say, I did not think the Wizards were going to be any good at all. So this is another instance of me being proved wrong pretty early through the first quarter of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, it's tough because of the schedule, but then you're looking at the harbingers that would normally concern you, whether the defense isn't for real. And I think the offensive concerns are absolutely for real. Like they are still to me, like he's been better this year, but like, Kristaps Porzingis post ups are still just a little bit too big a part of like the offensive structure for me. So and I didn't mean to turn it to are they buyers or sellers, but I think if the defense is actually this good, it makes being a buyer more palatable for both the team and fans.
Yep, agree. If you don't have anything else, I'll take us out. Everybody, thanks for listening. That's going to do it. You can, as Dan mentioned in the beginning, remember, trying to grow this audience, trying to grow our reach. We're trying to get into your homes and into your ears and your brains. So download, subscribe, comment, like, rate, review us, give us 5 stars on iTunes and any place else you can evaluate us positively would be fantastic. But that's a big one. Follow us on our socials, which we have in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. Join the Discord, which I have made a note to do myself. I pledge that I will be in there once I learn what a computer is. Dan can maybe help me with that. Tell your friends and enemies about us. Thank you again for listening. And in closing, as always, I would like to sincerely apologize to Jared Allen. And on behalf of Dan, I'm going to do it this week. I would like to shout out the one and only, who did not get mentioned again. Well, we did the East, but still, you usually like to fit him in somehow. Frank Ntilikina.
The Wizards should trade for Frank Ntilikina to juice up their offense.